Hi, this is Adele from In the Hoop Online. Just wanted to put a quick video together for you to show you how I go about cutting out the teddy bear patterns on fur. Slightly different way to go around using fur than your fabrics. You've got to be careful when you're cutting out fur that you don't cut the pile on the top. I've just got a piece of remnant fur that I picked up in a mill shop local to me quite a while ago. It's just a really small short pile fur, but it'll give you the idea of what you need to do. This is just a little handmade teddy that I put together several years back when I was starting on my bear making journey. But it just gives you an idea of the look that this fur will give you in the finished result there. So the previous video we spoke about how to resize patterns. Got these different size body patterns here that we resized on that video. So if you want to learn how to do that, check out the other video on my YouTube channel. We went into choosing the right joint sizes for that as well, if you did need to resize any of the sewing patterns that I've got on my webpage, or my Etsy page now. If you do want the pattern, it's on Etsy, it's In the Hoop Online, so have a look, see what we've got on there and enjoy making your teddies. So anyway, going back to cutting out. Now, when we cut fur, we do not ever want to cut the pile on the fabric. If you cut the pile on the fabric, particularly if it's a long hair pile, you'll end up with blunt edges, and you really don't want to do that when you're using fur. You want all your fur to be nice and long as it's intended to be. So this is how we go about it. I've already drawn these out because I save a little bit of time on this video for you. And we've got the leg pattern that we resized yesterday to the 70% of the original. And what I do, I trace out on the back of the fur. So with this particular leg, this is just for the one leg. Obviously, if you were making a set of legs for a teddy, you'd be cutting 2 plus 2. Now 2 means cut 2 this way and then 2 in reverse. So you flip the pattern over and then you'd cut the 2 in reverse as well. So obviously, like I said, just doing one leg, so we've just got the one and the one in reverse. And then this is for the foot pad. Now this is for the bunny rabbit that I've got on the on my Etsy shop. It's a gorgeous rabbit. I do an In the Hoop version as well for the embroidery machine. Now these points on the embroidered version are already embroidered within the pattern. For the sewing pattern, I'm going to show you how we go about putting these markings on in the next video. I'm going to do a couple of options with you. The first option will be using a plique, where we just cut out the pieces here and stitch those onto the foot pad. And then this version in fur looks absolutely fabulous if you needle felt some roving onto the bottom of the foot. Now we do that once the foot is made up on the leg and the leg is stuffed, so I'm going to show you that next. So anyway, going back to this one, cutting it out, so we've got the foot pad and the 2 pieces for the leg. So we've already traced around that with a chalk pencil. If you do want to use a pen, never use a pen that's going to bleed. Ask me how I know that, because I've been there and I've done that in the early years, and you'll end up with ink all over your fur, all over your hands, and it really is not good. So a sharp fabric pen, something that's not going to bleed. A biro is an absolute no-no. Chalk pens, chalk pencils, fantastic. Right, okay, so let's cut these out now. I really love these little scissors from Fiskars. I've just got a nice curve on them, which I think is really useful for going around these points, these curved points. A lot easier than going round with a big pair of shears. So I prefer these really tiny they've got to be sharp as well. Never use your scissors for paper, always keep these handy for your fabrics. Keep the blades nice and sharp. Personal choice at the end of the day, but that's my tip for me. Okay, so when we're cutting out, what we need to do, and I'm just going to show you on the edge here, what we need to do is just cut this backing fabric so we don't cut this pile. So take the scissors, go in from the edge and just cut like that. So we're just cutting the back. So if you imagine if this is a really long pile and you just go in with your scissors cutting all the way through, you'll actually end up with some really short bits and you don't want that. So just cut the back. So scissors in and then just snip through the backing until we've got, you go around the edge like this. So I'm going to go ahead and finish off those pieces, and then we'll go on to the next step, which is preparing to sew those together. We've got another step in between there, so I'll see you in a moment. Okay, just before we go back to those foot pieces and leg pieces, I've just got some longer pile fur here that I'm just going to demonstrate with you what the difference in cutting the fur all the way through and cutting the fur on the backing only. Just get my really long scissors. So if we take the end here, the pile is going down this way, and this is probably about an inch, is this pile, an inch long. So if we cut straight through, so if you ever decided you wanted to put your pattern piece on like that and then just cut around it, you can see here on the bottom, if you cut through, you'll end up with a very, very blunt end to your fur, and you do not want to do that. So if we turn that over instead and just go through the backing and just cut that backing, you can see you leave that pile on, so your fur is nice and natural right to the end, rather than it being blunt like that. So that's the difference. Always just cut the backing rather than the whole thing through the face of your fur. Okay, so we've got the leg pieces cut out. Now the next thing to do to prepare, we need to trim away the fur pile 5 millimeters in from the outside edge. Now this is so we don't have any fur pile in the seam allowance. If you leave fur in the seam allowance, particularly when you get onto your longer pile furs, you'll end up with really scraggly looking seams where the fur is all trapped inside, and you don't want to do that. It's easier to trim them away, trim away the fur to the seam allowance. So I use the 5 millimeter seam allowance. Trim away that fur, and then you don't get as much fur in the seam to pull out afterwards. So if you look on, you can see a little bit there. If you can see there, you can sometimes see your seams, and the fur will get trapped inside that seam. So just to try and help that getting trapped without you having to go in with a needle later on and pulling that out, just trim those seams off. So again, take your nice sharp pair of scissors and just start by taking off the fur. So you don't have to be too precise, you don't have to go right down to the backing, so long as you take some off to prevent that fur getting caught in your seams. So going all the way around like that. And do this on any time you want to sew with fur. Always trim your seams off to get that better finish. So I'm going to go ahead and finish those pieces off, all 3 pieces, and I'll see you back in a moment. Okay, so I've got the edges trimmed round on all the pattern pieces here. Another tip for you as well, if you're using woven back fur, you will probably be okay without doing this step. If you're using the cheaper fur, which always tends to have a knitted back, when you've cut your pattern pieces round, the edges might fray, so when you're stitching that together you might get your seams opening up. What I tend to do when I'm using the cheaper furs, when I've drawn the pattern pieces round on the back of the fur, before I cut them out, I just put together a little solution of PVA glue, which is just like your school glue. Dilute it a little bit with water, and then with your fingers, whatever, a brush, I'll just go over that line that I've drawn on the pattern piece. Wait for that to dry, so put a nice amount on there, wait for it to dry, and then cut your pattern piece out. It just helps prevent these parts fraying when you start stuffing your bear. Really good idea to do that on the heads as well, particularly because you do need to get those stuffed really firmly. So just put some PVA glue, or you can use a product called fraying, whichever you can find. It's the cheapest option for me that works, and that's how I go. So PVA glue diluted with a little bit of water, or your fraying. Okay, so that's that. So we've got the pieces together. Now this is, you can't probably see it as well on here, but when you've got your longer pile fur, when you're putting your pieces together, always push down the pile inside, so then when you're pinning the edges, you're getting as much pile away from that seam that you're going to sew as possible. So pin your edges, pushing that fur pile in all the way. Now remember, on this one we need to leave that turning gap that's going to be large enough for the joint, so don't forget when you're sewing that up that we're leaving that free. We're also leaving this bottom open as well on the leg because we're putting that insert in. So just scooch your fabric, your pile inside, and pin that. You can start at all your top and your bottom and all your curves, and then you can get all your pattern put together a little bit easier. Go from your point to point and then fill in your pins in between. And I always put my pins in this way. I think a lot of people do it differently, but I just find it's easier to take your pins out when you've pinned it like that, when you're using a sewing machine. I do actually sometimes leave my pins in as well. I know we shouldn't, but I do, and if you're putting them in that way, then the chances are you're not going to break your sewing machine needle either. Although I would advise take them out just to be on the safe side. So you see, do your points and then fill in your pins in between. Just makes it a little bit easier for you. And also it makes it that you make sure that you've actually got your pattern pieces together straight as well. So, and then once that's pinned, we're going to take it to the sewing machine and sew around the seams, and then we'll insert the foot for you, and then we'll go ahead to the next video like I said before, and I'm going to show you how to needle felt some paw pads in onto that foot. It really gives a lovely finish to your teddy, to your finished teddy. So that's pinned together. I'm going to go to the sewing machine, sew that up for you, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so we've taken that to the machine and stitched it round, leaving that open at the back. That'll be where we turn the foot round later, and then the bottom of the leg open for where we're putting the foot pad in. Another thing I'll mention to you as well, what I usually use is an upholstery thread when I'm sewing my teddy bears. It just gives that extra strength on the seams. I didn't have any for this in this colour, so you could see it, that it'd stand out, but normally choose a thread that matches the backing fabric if you can. I generally keep a selection of dark, like your beiges, your greys, your blacks in stock, but because I've not got a light one, so because I wanted to show you the stitching on here for the joint placement so you could see that. So just use a strong upholstery thread. You can use bonded nylon, anything like that that matches the backing fabric. I always find that that's the best choice to go for. Or if you've got something that's got a really light background to the darker fur, choose something that matches your fur, then you don't see that when you turn that through. Okay, so we've got the foot stitched out there, the leg stitched out there. I'm now going to insert the foot pad. So with these ones, you can fold that in half to find the centre of the toe and the heel. I mean, some of my patterns do come with markings on the foot to put to your seam, but because this is a design that's the same both sides, it's like a mirror image each side, you can just fold that in half and find the centre, top and bottom. Now on this one, the widest part is the toe, so this is the toe, so you need to make sure that that end is at this side. So again, tuck your fur in, find that seam on your leg and pin the centre of your toe to the leg, and then do the same with the heel. Tucking in your fur as you go, and then we're going to go round all the foot, easing the foot pad in until we've pinned that all the way around. So you might need to ease them in, making sure you've got the fur tucked in as much as you possibly can. Oh, so that's not been pinned in very well, has it? Get that put in properly. I tend to find that sometimes you just go through the fur pile rather than the backing, so make sure you get your backing in and then just ease those points in. It's quite heavy. It looks like I've stabbed myself there as well. It's not a good start. Good job it's not light fur. Yeah. Always helpful not to stab yourself with your pins. So go around and I shall come back to you again when I've finished that. Okay, so we've got all the foot pad pinned in place. What I now like to do, because I don't like taking that to the sewing machine and sewing it round with all the pins, this is the only time I probably don't like the pins in, because you sometimes need quite a lot of pins, it just gets really faffy. So I like to then whip stitch this foot pad to the leg. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. Make sure that when you're doing your whip stitching, you stay within that 5mm seam allowance that you're using. And you can put as many stitches in, or as few stitches in as you feel that you need when you're doing that. It also helps tuck the fur pile in, so it's all neatly inside and out of the way. So again, if you're going to do this as well, choose a thread that's going to match your fur, then don't see that if it does actually show through the other side. That's just doing a whip stitch all the way around. And you can see here that if you are using a fur with a backing that is likely to fray, this is one of the times that you really do need to be putting that fray check on, or your PVA glue. So it doesn't have to be neat, but it does have to stay within where you're going to do that stitch line stitching your foot pad on. So I'm going to continue doing that for you, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, so that's the foot pad whip stitched into place, and then I'm going to go ahead and take that to the sewing machine to stitch that on now. Now, find your own way. However, this is the way I find it easier. If I put it onto the sewing machine like that, so we've got the foot pad on the base of the sewing machine, and I stitch around it from this side. So stitch around it from this top side, and then you can push the fabric down. Make sure you open your seams up, keep those as flat as you possibly can, and then stitch around it from that top side. Don't try and do it like that, because you just end up with a mess, and you could end up with all these bits put in the seams. So foot pad down and stitch around it. I'm just going to go ahead and do that for you. Okay, so we've got the foot pad down, stitched into place now. So you can see these whip stitches are well within that seam allowance that we left for the foot pad. So if we turn the foot inside out, and sorry, the right way through, I always start at the toe and push that through. In fact, I'll just get a pair of hemostats. In fact, I'll use a chopstick. A pair of hemostats chopstick, something that doesn't have too sharp an end on it. Just help ease that through. It's quite a stiff fur, is this one. It's more like upholstery fur. I don't really know what it was. It's not like your usual mohair that you'd buy when you're making your artist teddy bears in the fur, that's for sure. That tends to be quite a lot more supple. So, get that pushed through like that. So you can see by the seams we've still got a little bit of fur now caught up in the edges. Now you can either use a needle and just pull those out, and particularly if you're using a long pile, you get quite a decent thickness needle, and then you can just go through where your seams are and just pull any trapped pile out of the seams like that. Alternatively, if I can find where I've put it, I have animals, so I have these things at hand. A nice wire brush. I do have some smaller ones somewhere, but I don't actually know where they've ended up. But that is the great tool that you can use on your carpets as well if you've got a load of fur and cottons and everything that you don't want to get in your vacuum. And I've also got the wire comb for the animals that I pinched. They have new ones, by the way, we don't interchange them. So these are ones that I now use for my sewing. So something like that, or a nice comb, and you can just brush out the seams. This one is a little bit better than using the plastic combs that you've got. You can just brush the seams out, making those nice and smooth, and then it hides the joins in your fur a little bit easier. You can see that there. Okay, Alright, so when that's stuffed you might want to comb that again to hide your joints in your fur. But basically that's your leg made, and that's how you cut out and prepare your fur fabrics to sew. I'm going to go ahead and stuff that one, and then on the next video I'm going to show you how we use the rovings and your needle felting needles to put a nice finish to the bottom of the feet. Now this can be done for this, which is the bunny rabbit, or we can do it for the teddy bears, the pandas, everything, the dogs, everything, all the other animals that we do. If you want to put a nice finish on, it looks great when you've done it over the fur. So watch the next video for that one, and I shall see you soon. Thank you for watching. Sorry, I did say on my previous video I would show you how to put the markings in for the joints on this one. If you watched that, we went into discussion that if you're resizing the pattern pieces, your joint placement's not going to be in the same place as is that. So we need to work out, once we've got your fabrics stitched together, where to put that. So if we place the joint that we're going to use, this is the 45mm joint that we're going to use on this size, the 70% size. If we place that up there, we can see that the centre of the joint is not going to be in the same place as it was before. So I said leave that off, don't mark it from your pattern yet, wait till it's stitched together and then do the placement. So if we get the joint washer, that's the nice flat part of the joint that we can see the centre in. With your chalk marker, pen, pencil, again something that's not going to bleed through your fabric. Offer the washer up, don't go too near that seam, we don't want the joints busting the seams. We need to be able to get a nice rounded finish on the teddy with a little bit of stuffing around it, not too much, and without that pushing through. So centre it up, mark the centre of your joint, that's where the post is going to go. So that's where we're going to go ahead, make a little cut and put the post through. So if I just find my quick unpick, just one moment. That's quick unpick. We're just going to make a little hole in the backing fabric here. Now, another thing I will say, that, and I've done this by experience, it's okay on this one because the foot is a mirror image down that centre line, so each side is the same. On some of my other designs, the teddy bears in particular, they've got a different shaped foot, so you've got a definite big toe and a little toe side. Always make sure that you're going to be putting your joint marking on the inside of the leg, so wherever that big toe will be the side that you put your marking. Okay, so again, it's just going to go in the backing of the fabric. We're just going to make that small cross cut into the backing, and I find that easier to do before we turn it through. So I should have done that before, so I've had to turn it back again. So we turn it through so you know where that hole is, and then go ahead and turn your foot through again. So please do the marking and for the joint before you turn it through, after you've put the foot pad on. And then we've got that at that side now, so you know where that hole is. So you can go ahead, put the joint in. and ease that through. Okay, so that's now all ready to be stuffed again. And I shall see you on the next video for definite with a stuffed leg, waiting to put those markings on the feet.